Well, my dear friends, it's finally happening. If you've been paying attention to what's been going on at Lucasfilm, it's clear they're in a period of transformation, but we didn't know what it meant. I made a video, well, 2 videos. The first one was talking about the way that some of the Los Angeles Mandalorian crew was replaced ahead of Ahsoka Season 2, and the other video was about revamps in terms of the vice presidents at Lucasfilm. And now we know Star Wars Celebration is going to be absolutely pivotal to give fans an indication, a glimpse at where Star Wars is heading. Kathleen Kennedy is leaving Lucasfilm, and depending on who replaces her, for better or for worse, Star Wars could look very different in just a few years' time. Are we heading for another golden age, or is it going to be missing the days when there were more frequent releases? We're entering a huge question mark, and that's kind of exciting, but also terrifying. After months of recent speculation and years of rumours, Kathleen Kennedy is finally retiring. This originally came from Puck News, but it's official. The Hollywood Reporter shared the story this morning, and they said this: after more than a decade in the galaxy far, far away, with triumphs and failures, Lucasfilm boss Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down. Arguably the most controversial, stigmatizing figure in Hollywood, this is a big day for Star Wars fans, and many are already taking to social media to voice their opinions. This will represent a fresh new start. We don't know who's going to replace her, and this is probably going to be something announced at Star Wars Celebration, but to many, the future of Star Wars is once again very bright. The Hollywood Reporter speculates there will be an update in Japan, as, quote, the future of the Star Wars franchise will be unveiled. So yes, very surprising, and there have been signs. Just a couple of weeks ago, I pointed out the fact she's suddenly receiving so many career awards is definitely a hint, and here we have it, my dear friends. After many years of anything but smooth sailing, she is finally stepping down. And while many fans are celebrating this, others don't believe it. These rumours have been going around for years. I'll believe it when I see it. Similar path to Iger, started out great, then completely destroyed anything she did good at the end. And it is true, she has been very successful in her other endeavours. Kathleen Kennedy's producing career goes beyond just Star Wars and Indiana Jones. But yes, in the eyes of Star Wars fans, she is responsible for many of the failures of Disney Star Wars, and the sheer state the IP finds itself in today. Others argue her position is a scapegoat. This person says, can we get rid of Dave Filoni and the rest of the creative team as well, and let Jon Favreau take over? And I will just say this. While many fans expect Jon Favreau to replace her, I don't think he wants that position. I think he wants to stay on the creative side, and not necessarily the business side. And if I were to make a prediction as to who's going to replace Kathy, it's the person listed on Lucasfilm's website as president and general manager, Lin-Wyn Brennan. She's been working directly under Kennedy, but I do expect we will hear an announcement very soon, maybe even by the time this video is out. News drops so fast these days. This is a massive deal. As Lucasfilm boss, Kennedy held one of the most visible and scrutinized jobs in Hollywood, and it wasn't always smooth sailing. She fired Chris Lord and Phil Miller as directors of Solo in the middle of production. She also sidelined Rogue One director Gareth Edwards, and here's the main bit. Other projects were promised that never materialized. They mention Rian Johnson's trilogy, but I'm starting to wonder, my dear friends, is this going to affect future Star Wars movies? Is the Rey movie going to be cancelled? As I say, we find ourselves in a complete unknown. We have no idea what the next step for the company is, what the direction for the future of the franchise looks like. This is something that needs to be outlined at Celebration, and it might be one of the reasons Andor Season 2's schedule is so weird. I don't know if you guys saw this, but instead of having 12 weeks of content, or them just grouping the first 3 episodes and then 1 a week after it, we're getting just 4 weeks of Star Wars Andor. 3 episodes every Tuesday, starting April 22nd. Each arc is a year. Essentially, we have a mini Star Wars movie every Tuesday. But maybe one of the reasons they're doing this is because there is going to be a surprise show later this year. Something unannounced. Something they'll reveal at Celebration. Maybe an animated show. But the future of Star Wars just got a very surprising twist. Kathleen Kennedy is going to be retiring. Then there are comments like this. Bring back George. I know Dave Filoni is in talks with George for certain projects. He calls them up for advice. He's contributed certain ideas over the years. But at his age, at this point in his life, I don't think he'd want to come back. Why would he want the stress? We used to pray for times like this person says. And as aforementioned, some people are going to say this announcement is a huge blessing. The amount of damage she's done is probably irreversible though. And this brings up a different discussion. Is Star Wars unsalvageable? Absolutely not. Some people might say Star Wars is dead, but as long as there is a fandom, as long as we have hope, as long as there is passion for the stuff we love, Star Wars will always find a way back. Another sentiment I see quite often is Star Wars needs a break. We need time to miss it. I think there will always be a demand for good Star Wars. And in a really weird sense, we need to return to the days where Star Wars felt like an event. It wasn't frequent, but when a movie came out, it was unmissable. So I think to a great extent, whatever happens next, Star Wars needs to return to its roots and take on a different form to the way it's being managed and produced. And to a small degree with what's going to be announced at Celebration, I have a hunch that's the plan. And when they're not treating Star Wars as a cash cow, when they're not pumping out show after show, no regard for quality, when there's respect put into it and they take their time, Star Wars can finally do some healing. But I don't think the damage is irreversible. It'll take time, but Star Wars will bounce back. But I get it. Some fans think it's too late. Interestingly enough, she does also have her defenders. I've seen quite a few comments say she was great for Star Wars. And even as someone on the more positive side of the fandom, I've been very vocal about the stuff I love. I just can't personally rationalize so many of the decisions that she's made. The creatives she's put in charge of projects, directors and writers that have been fired, movies and shows scrapped that had a lot of promise, delays on movies like Rogue Squadron that were never heard from again, the Lando show, which is now apparently going to be a movie, Children of Blood and Bone, a droid story, and then with projects that were made, it's been a mixed bag. I feel like on the animation front, they really have that nailed down. Lucasfilm Animation has produced some of the best quality storytelling. Tales of the Jedi, Star Wars Rebels, The Clone Wars Season 7, The Bad Batch, and I'm excited for what's coming next. But when it comes to live action, Lucasfilm missed the mark where it counted. Andor was great, The Mandalorian was great, but when you're talking about the first ever Sith show, or when you're talking about the return of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Boba Fett, the original plans were great. The Boba Fett movie, the Kenobi trilogy, the people originally in charge of those cared about those characters. Some of what was meant to be an Obi-Wan directly continued on from Revenge of the Sith, respected George Lucas, and even John Jackson Miller, who wrote the best expanded universe Kenobi novel, but instead, we got Deborah Chow and Joby Harold's vision. And while it was great seeing some of those characters again, that was such a missed opportunity, in retrospect. I've had people say to me, if you're going to blame Kathleen Kennedy when things are bad, then you have to thank her when they're good. It's more complicated than that. The way I rationalize liking some Disney Star Wars and not others is they don't seem to get results when it counts. The sequel trilogy, legacy characters in live action shows, the stuff that really defines a brand, especially in the wider general audience. I'm not going to mention The Acolyte. I've done that to death, and every time I do, Acolyte fans say, "You're so toxic and you should just stop talking about it because it's not as bad as you say, blah blah blah." So I'm not even going to mention it, but there are so many examples where her leadership just completely fell flat and didn't do justice to the Star Wars brand. The state of the fandom isn't because of so-called toxic fans. The Star Wars fandom is a very vocal group, but a passionate one. There are sides of it that do take things way too far. It's never okay to attack others, but the reason there is so much disdain, so much anger, I guess, towards what Disney has done with Star Wars is because fundamentally fans care. And maybe, just maybe, this will be a step in the right direction. I wish Kathleen Kennedy all the best. She's had a very big career outside of Lucasfilm, but I definitely think Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and even Indiana Jones, deserve better than this.